This was phenomenal. I really enjoyed this one. What's up, YouTube? It's JackalGoldKick, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a movie review for Resident Evil Death Island, which is the newest and latest animated Resident Evil movie. Now, before I get into this review, I want to give a huge shout out to CrazyPizzaMan 21. Because of him, I was able to see this film. I was talking with him recently, and he actually provided me a code for this film that came with his Blu-ray. And much appreciation to him. Shout out to him. I'll link his channel in the description. Go check him out. Go subscribe to him. He makes good videos. I did some collabs with him back in the day. I've known him for a while on this platform. Really cool guy. Huge shout out to him for hooking me up with this movie because I'm a Resident Evil fan and I've always wanted to see this movie ever since it was announced. Now, to do a quick recap on the animated Resident Evil stuff before I get into reviewing this film, when it comes to the first animated Resident Evil film, I thought it was okay, but I feel like the second half of that film kind of dropped off. There wasn't as much action in it compared to the first half, but it did have Leon and Claire in it. The second one, I think it's called Damnation. That was better than the first one. It had some cool stuff in there, like the tyrant fighting the lickers. But you only had like two Resident Evil characters, much like the first one, but still a good film. Step up from the first one. And then the third one, Resident Evil Vendetta. Before this film, that was my favorite. I thought that was the best one because you had Chris, Leon, and Rebecca. So you had three Resident Evil characters. Now, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness has grown on me. When I first saw Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, I didn't really like it. I thought it was a misstep and I thought it was the weakest of the animated stuff. But when I rewatched it, I'm like, you know what? This isn't too bad. So I don't mind that one. It has grown on me. I do still have some issues with it. I think Claire doesn't get to do a whole lot in there in terms of action, and I don't like how Leon doesn't give her some evidence of some corrupt government stuff at the end. I didn't like that. But other than that, that series has grown on me, honestly. But this movie, Resident Evil Death Island, this is easily the best animated Resident Evil thing we've seen thus far, hands down. And that's what I like about this animated Resident Evil thing that they've been doing is that every single one they make has been better than the last. Way better than the last. It's like each one just improves over the last one. That's really good because that's how a series should be. Like each one should be getting better and better. So yeah, shout out to Crazy Piece Man 21. Link in the description to his YouTube channel. Go subscribe to him because I was able to see this movie. I really enjoyed this film. Now, to do a quick thoughts and review in terms of keeping it spoiler free for everyone, if you're a Resident Evil fan, go see this film. You'll enjoy it a lot. It's a Resident Evil movie that I think will make every single Resident Evil fan happy, period, because of the cast of characters that are in it and just how much of a step up I think it is from all the other animated Resident Evil stuff we've seen. Now I'm going to get into spoilers and just a full review of it. So the premise of the film is you have Leon, Jill, Claire, Chris, and Rebecca, and there's this villain named Dylan, and he pretty much, he used to be an umbrella, and we see a scene of that where he was an umbrella soldier, and then what ended up happening is there were some orders where some of the umbrella soldiers got infected when they went to this Raccoon City town, and what ends up happening is his friend is killing the soldiers, but he's not with it, and he's ordered to kill his friend, and he shoots his friend, but the gun doesn't work, and then his friend tries to kill him, and he ends up killing his friend, and it ties in with the villain in the film, which is Dylan. Now, I like the concept of, I guess, kind of what he was wanting to do in terms of, the whole good and evil discussion. I think he had some interesting stuff and some interesting dialogue with some of the characters, but he was kind of a Two-Face ripoff a little bit with the whole gun thing. Like, you know how Two-Face with the coin is like, whichever one this lands on is you either die or you don't, something. It's kind of what I feel like they did with him. He was kind of a plain villain, to be honest with you. I don't think he was really that appealing of a villain, to be honest. So I think the villain in this film definitely could have been a lot better. Probably one of the only weaknesses of the film. He's working with Maria, which is from Vendetta. I think she was. I would say I liked her more than the main villain. I think she was a little more interesting because she had the aspect of wanting revenge since her dad was killed in Vendetta, and she wanted to go after Leon. And her battle suit kind of reminds me of Jill's battle suit from Resident Evil 5. And then you have the rest of the cast of characters: Leon, Chris, Rebecca, Jill, Claire, and Rebecca, and they all meet and cross paths in some way or another. And the premise of the film is they go to Alcatraz, and Dylan is going to release this virus that's set in these drones. That he's going to release from these, I pretty much call them water liquors. We see these liquors in the film that can swim in the ocean and come out of the ocean. They're pretty much water liquors, which is pretty cool to see that. And he wants to like infect the world and get them to be a part of his philosophy, basically. That's the premise, and they have to stop him. So basically, your traditional Resident Evil story. The heroes have to get together, team up, and take the big bad guy down and save the world pretty much. Right off the bat, first thing I want to say about this film that I really love and I really enjoyed is it had such a good pace to it. There wasn't much slowness to it. There wasn't much slow down moments. Like as soon as you start the film and as soon as you start watching it, it gets right to it. It doesn't waste too much time. You get right to the action right away. It's really fast paced, I feel like, and I feel like there was a lot of action in the film, and I never really felt like I was bored or felt like, it was dragging or slowing down. I really like the pace of this film, and I like how there was just a lot of action in it, and there was rarely slow moments. I really appreciated that. Because there was action in the past Resident Evil stuff, the animated stuff, but there were moments of slowness, and I feel like this is easily the most fast-paced, action-packed one yet. There's a lot of good scenes in this film I like. I like the scene where Leon's on the bike, he's talking to Hunnigan, he goes after this truck, and he ends up getting into a bike fight with Maria, who wants revenge on him for killing Arius. That's a really good scene, really good action. I like that one a lot. It's a pretty good scene. Some other good action scenes. There's a fight scene with Leon and Maria later on, which is a really good fight scene. They fight each other, really good action, and that was pretty good as well. I liked that. You also get another really cool action scene where it's Chris and Jill and Claire, and they're in Alcatraz and they're fighting all these zombies with melee and pistols. That stuff was really cool, very entertaining to see that. Now, Jill's never been one of my favorite characters, to be honest, but I think they did a really good job with her character in this film. So let's talk about the characters. Jill Valentine, I think they did a really good job with her in this film because this film, from what I can tell, takes place after Resident Evil 6 because they talk about peers, which I thought was really cool. This is why I think Resident Evil fans will really enjoy this film because you get all these characters you know and love, and you get references to their games. So, for instance, there's a scene where Chris is talking to Jill and says, I used to know a guy named Pierce. He died. I was like, oh shit, this is after Resident Evil 6. So, in terms of the characters, you have Jill. Let's start with her. This is after RE5. She's dealing with the aftermath of being back on the field and, when she was mind controlled by Wesker and the events of RE5. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see her back in current storyline form because, well, Jill hasn't been in a Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 5 in terms of like the current mainline story. There was Revelations 1 and RE3 Remake, but in terms of, current relevant storyline, she has not been in the series in a very long time. So it was interesting to see her show up in the new storyline and see what was going on with her. I think they did a really good job with her character. She had a lot of good moments in the movie, a lot of good action, and I think she had really good writing for her character. I just thought they did a really good job with her, and I liked her, chemistry with Chris, them catching up, the dialogue between them two was great. Some tension there. I think the whole interaction with Jill and Leon, them actually getting to meet each other first time, that was awesome. I was smiling at that. There was a lot of moments in this fucking movie where I was smiling. Like I said, man, it's perfect, perfect for Resident Evil fans. I'm a Resident Evil fan. I feel like every Resident Evil fan would really get a kick out of this in some way. I was smiling from this. I loved seeing Jill and Leon meet each other. That was so cool because we've never seen that in any of the games. I guess we technically saw that in the shitty live action Resident Evil movie. What was it, Retribution? But nothing ever came from that. You only saw them together on the fucking White House rooftop. So this is a better version of that. So they get to meet each other. They get to interact with each other, and it's just really cool. They have great chemistry. Leon has great one-liners, which I'll get to. The chemistry with Leon and Jill is awesome. They get really cool action together. They meet each other. They have a little fight. They deal with these water liquors. It's really cool. And, they just got really good chemistry. I like the dialogue between the two. It's really great. And it's awesome, because we've never got to see these characters meet each other. Chemistry works really well. They work well together. They definitely need to put this kind of stuff in the games. That's for sure. And then, her chemistry with the villain was interesting, her back and forth dialogue with him. Her interactions with Rebecca that are there, her interactions with Claire is pretty cool. Like there's a scene where Chris, Claire, and Jill, or I think are drinking some coffee or something. That was pretty cool because we never really seen Claire and Jill really interact that much as well. So to talk about some of the other characters, Leon S. Kennedy, let's talk about him. I think they did a really good job with Leon. I really enjoyed Leon a lot in this film. I thought his one-liners were actually some of his best one-liners in the Resident Evil series. Almost every one of them I enjoyed or got some chuckle out of. I really liked his one-liners in this film. They just felt very natural and they felt like they fit his character and they just felt right. None of them felt cringy. None of them felt like they were cheesy. They were just really good. Like, lines where he was, him and Jill are working together and Jill's like, "How many are there?" And Leon says, "I don't know. I'm not counting them." Like, I liked that, talking about the water liquors or when they're trying to get through a certain area of Alcatraz. Leon's like, it'd be like breaking out of prison, just a lot of the one liners from Leon are great, you know a lot of the stuff he says, I really enjoyed. So I think the writing for this film, especially like for Leon's character, is really good. I think they did a good job. Matthew Mercer does a good job voicing him. I like his voice as Leon. I still love Paul Mercier from RE4 the most, but Matthew Mercer's a good voice actor for Leon. It is a little bit odd though how we're kind of bouncing between voice actors in the Resident Evil series because we had Leon's voice, Nick Apostolito's in RE2 remake. We had that for Infinite Darkness, but then we're back to Matthew Mercer. A little bit odd, but Matthew Mercer does a great job as Leon. I like his performance. I like Leon's design in this movie. He's got kind of facial hair. He's a blue shirt and vest. Pretty cool design. I like his action in the film. He got a lot of great moments using the car later on when Dylan injects himself and becomes this huge creature. Using the car, teaming up with Chris. A lot of the scenes with him and Chris were really cool. Getting some team up scenes. That's always cool to see. Teaming up to use a rocket launcher on him. Basically, his premise is that he was sent to go after this. I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the one guy with the glasses that Claire has some interactions with, and he ends up dying. Leon was sent to go after him, and he ended up in Alcatraz, which is why he's here. And you had really good action scenes with him. At the beginning with the bikes, all the stuff with Jill was awesome. The fight scene with Maria was awesome. Just a lot of great moments with him. So they did a good job with Leon. Chris, they did a great job with him as well. I think he had really good chemistry and back and forth with Jill. It was cool to see them reconnect after the events of RE5 and RE6. It was interesting that he mentioned Piers, because Piers was a cool character. You get to see his interactions with Leon and Claire and Rebecca, and those are pretty cool, as well as a Jill one I mentioned. You get some of his interactions with the villain. Chris has a lot of cool stuff in this film. Even the scene at the beginning is pretty cool where they show up at this place and Jill's there by herself, and Chris is like, "Oh, it's Jill." And yeah, I like what they did with Chris in this film. Good design. I liked his voice actor. Again, it's a different one compared to the ones we get. I do think Resident Evil should try to be a little bit more consistent with its voice actors. They usually seem to always bounce all over the place. I mean, the voice actors in this movie are good, but I just wish they would be a little bit more consistent on who they use. You know, I think that would, be preferable. But Chris's voice is good. I like his design. It's basically the same design as Vendetta. I really like his outfit in Alcatraz where he has like a shirt and they go on the boat and he has like a Hawaiian shirt. Definitely gave me some Resident Evil 5 vibes. Reminds me of that RE5 outfit Safari he had. He's got great action. Alcatraz killing the zombies with the pistol. And, he has some good action with Claire. He has some great action later on with helping everybody else fighting the big monster and stuff like that. So they did a really good job with Chris. Plays it serious, which is what his character is. So the writing for him was good. Claire, they did a pretty good job with her. She got a decent amount to do in here. They definitely improved her in this compared to Infinite Darkness because Infinite Darkness, she didn't really get to do anything in that in terms of action, which was disappointing. At least in this one, she gets to actually do something. At least she gets to kill some zombies and use a gun compared to Infinite Darkness. So I like what they did with Claire. Her chemistry with Chris was pretty cool. Her little interactions with Jill was cool. I think she had some interactions with Leon, though not a whole lot, which maybe that's something they should have did more with. But maybe that can be kind of difficult when you have so many characters on screen. Um, but some other things I want to say about Claire's character, I thought her design in the movie was really good. I thought her voice was really good. I liked the voice for Claire. I thought the action for her character was really good as well. And I like her chemistry with Chris. I like her chemistry with Jill that's there. I like her chemistry with Rebecca. It's cool that her and Rebecca got to team up a bit because you never seen them two together either. and they got to team up, and they got to, go into the lab, and you know, with these like Rebecca had a really good plan to take these drones and use it against the villain, which is cool. So they did a really good job with Claire and good voice actors. Let's talk about Rebecca Chambers next. They did a really good job with Rebecca Chambers. I like what they did with her. You know, she did play the behind the scenes somewhat, but she actually got to be involved and be in some of the action, which is really cool. I'm glad she got to be out in the field somewhat. She had a cool moment with Claire using the rocket launchers. She came in and saved the day by giving the characters vaccines when they got infected. And she had good stuff to do. I think they used her well. She had a good voice actress, and I like what they did with her. So I think for all the characters, they did a good job, and that's like the two biggest things about this film that's really cool, and that's why this is the best one yet. Is because you have a fast pace, mostly filled to the brim action film that you're never bored, you're entertained, and you have the star power of having Jill, Leon, Chris, Rebecca, Claire, all these Resident Evil characters on the screen together and just getting scenes with them, getting cool stuff like Leon and Jill working together, and just getting all these characters together. That's what really makes this film. And also the stuff they do with these characters and some of the tie-ins with the games. It's great. And Maria, that was a cool villain. Now, if I had to give a critique, though, I will say this. I think one of the things it's not a huge issue to the point where it would be a disappointing film where I would say it sucks, but something that is kind of a critique with the film is they marketed the film as like a film that has Leon and Chris and Rebecca and Claire and Jill, and it kind of makes you seem like they're going to be a team the whole way through, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, yes, they are in the film and they do have scenes together, but in my opinion, there's not enough of that. Like Leon, Jill, Claire, Rebecca, Chris, they do get to work together and do some stuff together, which is awesome. But I think we could have at least had another scene, or two, or at least one more scene, or some kind of other part of the movie with all of them working together. Because really, the only time they all work together and do stuff together is like kind of near the end when they're going after the big monster. There is a scene shared with all of them to some extent, in other parts of the film, but I do think we could have had at least another scene or just some kind of another moment in the film where you have all of them together doing something. It could have been just them killing zombies. Hell, you could have had a scene where they were dealing with water lickers again. That would have been cool. And yeah, I do think that's the biggest critique I have is that I felt a little shortchanged. I'm like, it's cool to have all these characters in here, but I definitely think they could have had them all together in more scenes because they kind of split them up, if that makes sense. You have Leon and Jill in this scene, you have Chris and Claire in that scene, you have Rebecca by herself. And, don't get me wrong, it's cool to have Leon and Jill together. I'm not saying I want that out, but I do think if there's one thing they could have did with this film, they should have had more with the entire roster doing more together rather than just kind of here and there near the end of the film. At least one more scene. Could have been them killing zombies. It could have been them maybe wiping out water lickers, something. And then the only other critique I would say is that the villain was mostly bland. I mean, I like the aspect of his, philosophy of good and evil and all that stuff, but I do think he was mostly bland as a villain. He just didn't really stand out. There was nothing about him that was particularly, interesting or groundbreaking as a villain. To be honest, he was just there to be a red shirt villain and just be the bad guy to take down. I think, like I said, I think Maria was a better villain. She had a cool character design. I like how she was wanting revenge, and she was just a lot more cool, in my opinion. They should have just honestly made her the main villain of the movie, to be honest. So yeah, the film had good action, good use of the characters, and I like the Maria villain. I like a lot of the scenes in it, had good action. The animation for this film was really good. I think they did a really good job with this film in terms of the animation. Looks really solid animation wise. Voice acting's great. Now the music, I don't really remember being that super memorable. I don't know. The music in the film didn't seem that memorable from what I can remember. Like I only watched it once, but none of the music seemed to stick out all that much. I think Resident Evil definitely, whatever they were doing with their older games, and even to an extent the first Paul W. Anderson Resident Evil movie, they need to kind of hone in on that kind of stuff in terms of like making some iconic music. That is something that's kind of lacking. Is it didn't seem like the score of this film really stuck out all that much, to be honest. But I like the setting where they're all in a prison. It's like an island type prison, Alcatraz. I think it's a really good setting. You get to see zombies in there. The water lickers are pretty cool. The fish monster's pretty cool. And the one side character I didn't really care for, it was the guy with the glasses. He was just a red shirt, just your generic, oh, the side character involved with the story. He eventually dies, and I didn't think he was really all that interesting, to be honest. He was just kind of there, to be honest. I'm trying to think of some other things I could say about the film, but I think I covered everything. So yeah, Resident Evil Death Island overall, I enjoyed this film. I think this is definitely the best animated thing they've made thus far. The reason I like it more than everything else they've made is because you have more Resident Evil characters. You have all of mostly the iconic Resident Evil characters in here, all teaming up. You got tons of entertaining action, great animation, zombies, water lickers, awesome stuff like Jill and Leon teaming up, great one-liners from Leon, really cool stuff like Leon fighting Maria. Maria's a pretty cool villain, though the main villain is bland. And maybe something else they could have done with the film that would have been cool. Maybe they can incorporate this with a new one if they want to continue with this roster. Which, by the way, I want to see this for a Resident Evil game. The roster they have in this movie, I really want to see this for a Resident Evil game. I think we at least need one Resident Evil game with this kind of roster. That's kind of what Resident Evil 6 should have been, honestly. Resident Evil 6 tried to do that, but it was still missing like Jill and Claire and stuff like that. I would say, 2 characters that would have been cool to see in this film that was kind of missing from it was Barry and Ada. Yeah, I do think it would have been cool to have Barry Burton and Ada Wong in this, because it's kind of weird to have Leon in a film with no Ada, because that's usually a trademark. Granted, Ada wasn't in Vendetta, but it would have been cool to see Barry Burton and Ada Wong in this film. That would have been awesome. I think that would have really added to it. Like, oh shit, it's Barry and Ada. Hell yeah! Like that would have been great to have them in there. Maybe throw Billy Cohen in there. Fuck it, Rebecca's in here. you know. Hopefully they can do something like that with the next one. Like I think if they want to continue doing these animated Resident Evil movies, whether it's a TV show next or another movie, they should really up it. They should make it like basically like the Expendables. Just keep adding characters. With the next animated Resident Evil movie, I'd like to see this roster again, but even more involved in more scenes and add on to it. Put Barry Burton in there, put Ada Wong in there, maybe put Billy Cohen in there or some other character like Parker or Carlos, and just keep it going. But overall, this was a solid film. I enjoyed it. Definitely the best one yet because it had the most action and just the most Resident Evil characters thus far, and just had that star power and cool setting and just really awesome. I really enjoyed this one, especially the finale. The finale was really good. I like the finale scene with all the characters working together trying to take down this boss. A lot of great dialogue between the characters, and this film was just done really well. And it really feels like I said, the perfect kind of Resident Evil movie for Resident Evil fans. This is I think what Resident Evil movies should have been all along from the beginning. Because the live action Resident Evil movies, I don't mind some of them, but they should have had characters like this rather than Alice. This is what Resident Evil fans really, really want, I think, from Resident Evil adaptations for like movie shows and anime type stuff. I think this is what they want. This is what I want, definitely. We don't want new characters. We don't want somebody that don't exist in Resident Evil. We want the ones we know and love. It also would have been cool. This is just like a what if type thing, but I think it would have been cool to see Wesker in this if they could bring him back. I really do miss Wesker in the series. It was a really good film. Like imagine a movie like this, but Wesker is the villain. Like, oh, that would have been even crazier. Like Leona Chris versus Wesker. That's a fight I've always wanted to see. But yeah, a solid film. The only critiques I would give it is the villain was bland. He didn't stand out all that much, though I did like Maria. And the side character was pretty lame with the glasses. And then the only other issue I would say is the main cast of characters. They could have at least used just one more scene altogether doing something besides just kind of how they went about it. And the score of music definitely could have been better. But other than that, enjoyable film. I was entertained by this and I liked it. I liked it so much I wanted to record a review for it. So that's to tell you something. I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. If you're a Resident Evil fan, I've done some Resident Evil videos on this channel. I've done top 10 Resident Evil characters. I've done a review of the first Resident Evil movie. I've done a review of Resident Evil 3 Remake. I did a thoughts video on RE4 Remake. And yeah, I really enjoyed this film. Thanks, Crazy Pizza Man 21, for letting me see this because It was a blast watching this, that's for sure. But that's it for this review. Peace out. And let me know what you thought of this film in the comments.